The $2.3 billion corporate collapse that Oliver Martinez desperately tried to prevent became the most catastrophic business destruction in exploitation history when his predatory, sign-or-die-poor ultimatum during my emergency surgery collided with my comprehensive organizational knowledge that exposed exactly why exploiting vulnerable employees through medical coercion is the fastest way to convert essential corporate loyalty into company-annihilating professional warfare that obliterates both organizational credibility and business prospects through sophisticated corporate destruction and strategic exploitation justice that proves business success requires human dignity rather than predatory manipulation and medical vulnerability. Exploitation through systematic empathy, elimination, and strategic workplace predation that destroys critical human relationships and corporate sustainability. For 22 years, I had been their executive vice president of strategic operations, the organizational architecture expert who designed complex corporate frameworks, implemented critical business systems, and maintained the kind of institutional knowledge that enabled competitive advantages and market dominance while ensuring strategic excellence and corporate leadership through sophisticated business architecture and professional mastery that most executives completely took for granted. Despite depending entirely on my expertise for organizational positioning and competitive protection, from market challenges through advanced business implementation and strategic corporate management that required comprehensive understanding of operational dynamics and institutional methodology that transcended profit assumptions and business exploitation patterns. I was the professional who understood every corporate secret, every operational protocol, every strategic vulnerability, and every potential competitive advantage that could transform functional business operations into market leadership when institutional expertise was valued or exploited through executive predation and vulnerability manipulation that eliminated critical operational capabilities and strategic positioning through systematic professional reduction and strategic corporate humanity elimination that enabled comprehensive competitive disadvantage and organizational stagnation through human exploitation and workplace predation patterns. But to Oliver Martinez, our exploitation-focused human resources director, who measured employee value entirely through vulnerability metrics and manipulation opportunities, rather than professional dignity or institutional loyalty that enabled organizational advancement and competitive positioning, I was just another corporate resource whose medical crisis could be safely exploited as leverage opportunity that represented workplace efficiency rather than essential human experience that created measurable relationship value and organizational advantages through sophisticated empathy, analysis, and professional compassion. Excellence that transcended exploitation assumptions about vulnerability, limitations, and medical-based professional considerations that characterized workplace humanity and employee protection. Oliver believed that employee vulnerability was primarily manipulation opportunity rather than human reality, that medical crisis was naturally inferior to corporate leverage, and that professional compassion was essentially subordinate to exploitation maximization. Regardless of the human relationships and institutional capabilities that enabled organizational advancement and competitive success through sophisticated empathy implementation and strategic compassion management that required years of specialized expertise and emotional intelligence rather than exploitation enhancement and humanity reduction through workplace predation and systematic empathy elimination that violated basic human decency. When he approached my hospital bed during emergency surgery recovery and coldly announced that I must sign or die poor while threatening financial destruction unless I accepted exploitative contract modifications, he thought he was demonstrating corporate authority that could eliminate institutional dependencies while controlling organizational efficiency through systematic vulnerability exploitation that prioritized immediate leverage over long-term relationship sustainability and human respect that enabled competitive positioning and organizational leadership through corporate excellence and strategic professional compassion that recognized employee dignity and institutional value. What Oliver didn't realize was that the strategic operations executive he was systematically exploiting possessed not only comprehensive organizational expertise, but detailed knowledge of exactly which corporate vulnerabilities could trigger billion-dollar organizational collapse, while proving the devastating consequences of exploitation ignorance that eliminated essential institutional capabilities through strategic corporate warfare demonstration and professional destruction supremacy that would vindicate workplace humanity faster than predatory manipulation, could eliminate relationship advancement and professional empathy through systematic human exploitation and strategic compassion, destruction that violated corporate wisdom and competitive intelligence about professional relationship importance and institutional expertise value, regardless of exploitation priorities and vulnerability assumptions. My expertise in strategic operations and organizational architecture had developed through years of building complex institutional systems, while understanding that operational professionals required both exceptional corporate competence and strategic protection from exactly the kind of predatory exploitation and vulnerability manipulation that could destroy competitive advantages and business advancement through short-sighted leverage analysis that prioritized immediate exploitation gain over long-term institutional expertise and operational capabilities that enabled business transformation and competitive positioning through superior empathy implementation and strategic compassion management that transcended exploitation, assumptions about vulnerability, complexity, and corporate manipulation requirements, despite systematic workplace predation and professional exploitation patterns. I had joined the company as an operations analyst, attracted by their reputation for complex organizational challenges that required innovative approaches to institutional development, professional optimization, and corporate architecture that pushed traditional business solutions beyond conventional limits, while maintaining dignity standards that enabled competitive advantages and organizational positioning through superior professional implementation that transcended exploitation assumptions. About vulnerability, complexity, and operational management requirements, despite systematic empathy elimination and workplace predation that reduced human opportunities and institutional stability. Over 22 years, I had evolved from someone who maintained routine operational procedures to someone who designed revolutionary institutional architectures that could handle complex corporate scenarios, unpredictable business demands, and strategic organizational challenges while maintaining professional excellence that distinguished industry leaders from competitors who struggled with institutional advancement and operational reliability that required advanced empathy expertise and sophisticated compassion analysis that transcended exploitation, convenience, and business cost considerations, that systematically eliminated human contributions and professional advancement through workplace predation and systematic vulnerability manipulation. My corporate work wasn't just operational implementation, it was strategic institutional architecture that incorporated understanding of organizational requirements, competitive constraints, professional sustainability, and empathy positioning that enabled complex business systems to succeed while providing long-term advantages through superior compassion, excellence, and human reliability that couldn't be easily replicated by competitors who lacked similar empathy expertise and institutional commitment that enabled professional excellence and strategic human competence through advanced organizational development, despite exploitation barriers and executive resistance to workplace humanity that systematically marginalized employee dignity. I had successfully created institutional solutions that other executives claimed were impossible to achieve within corporate constraints, generated organizational approaches that solved critical business problems through innovative empathy techniques, and built operational frameworks that could predict and optimize performance before conventional methods affected business effectiveness or competitive positioning through systematic professional management and intelligent corporate assessment. That demonstrated empathy, excellence regardless of exploitation assumptions about vulnerability, complexity, and professional effectiveness despite systematic predation elimination and workplace exploitation patterns. But perhaps most importantly, I had developed comprehensive understanding of corporate vulnerabilities, organizational destruction mechanisms, and strategic business warfare that could execute exactly the kind of systematic institutional collapse that would expose workplace exploitation while proving the critical importance of human respect through strategic professional demonstration and corporate empathy supremacy that would transform organizational dynamics faster than predatory manipulation, could eliminate institutional capabilities and professional compassion through systematic human exploitation and strategic empathy destruction that violated business wisdom and competitive intelligence about professional relationship sophistication and corporate humanity necessity, regardless of traditional exploitation assumptions and workplace predation patterns that systematically targeted employee vulnerabilities and institutional loyalty. Before I tell you about the corporate destruction that annihilated a predatory organization through professional accountability, let me pause for everyone who has ever experienced medical exploitation and vulnerability manipulation by corporate predators who fail to understand the human dignity and institutional loyalty that vulnerable employees deserve during medical crises through compassionate workplace implementation and corporate humanity that enables healing support and business sustainability through sophisticated empathy, competence, and professional compassion that transcends exploitation constraints and predatory convenience through workplace humanity, democracy, and corporate empathy, accountability that recognizes human suffering regardless of traditional business assumptions about vulnerability, opportunities, and medical leverage potential. If you believe that vulnerable employees deserve recognition for human dignity that enables organizational humanity, that professional compassion should be valued rather than exploited through workplace predation, that sophisticated emotional intelligence deserves corporate respect through empathy demonstration rather than systematic exploitation of individual medical experiences and vulnerability contributions that enable relationship advancement and organizational positioning, then you're about to witness what happens when predatory manipulation meets sophisticated corporate expertise and professional institutional mastery that determines whether complex business relationships provide human respect or create organizational transformation through systematic professional demonstration and expert empathy retaliation against workplace exploitation and professional predation patterns. Most people listening haven't subscribed yet, but if you want more stories where exploited vulnerable employees receive vindication through corporate expertise while exposing predatory manipulation through comprehensive professional excellence and strategic empathy warfare that demonstrates the critical importance of workplace humanity and human advancement in corporate environments that protect rather than exploit medical vulnerability, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, there are plenty more HR directors out there who think vulnerability exploitation supersedes human dignity, rather than recognizing compassionate professionals with sophisticated institutional knowledge and empathy capabilities that enable organizational transformation through advanced professional implementation and competitive advancement excellence, despite systematic workplace predation and medical exploitation patterns. Now, back to Oliver Martinez, who was about to learn that some strategic operations executives understand corporate vulnerabilities better than HR directors understand exploitation opportunities, and that empathy expertise becomes systematic organizational destruction when vulnerability manipulation meets professional reality that transcends predatory authority through corporate humanity and institutional mastery that enables competitive dominance through strategic business advancement and professional compassion regardless of traditional exploitation assumptions and workplace predation patterns that systematically target employee medical crises and institutional loyalty. Oliver Martinez represented everything dangerous about corporate leadership that confused vulnerability exploitation with actual professional competence, while treating employee medical crises as leverage opportunities rather than human experiences that enabled relationship sustainability and competitive positioning through empathy, expertise, and compassion management that couldn't be easily replaced through predatory approaches and human exploitation that removed institutional knowledge, and competitive relationship positioning through systematic empathy destruction and professional compassion elimination, despite the critical importance of human dignity and workplace compassion that protected rather than exploited employee vulnerabilities and medical experiences. He had been promoted to HR director based on his ability to maximize cost savings through aggressive exploitation strategies that impressed executives who measured business success by leverage metrics rather than human advancement or empathy excellence that characterized progressive organizational leadership and competitive advancement maintenance through relationship expertise, recognition, and advanced professional implementation that enabled organizational positioning and strategic competitive management regardless of human dignity and employee well-being that deserved protection rather than exploitation during medical vulnerability. Oliver spoke confidently about corporate efficiency and leverage optimization, but his understanding of actual professional relationship requirements was dangerously superficial. He could discuss exploitation concepts in executive presentations, while having no comprehension of the institutional empathy, professional compassion, and relationship implementation that enabled organizational transformation through sophisticated empathy architecture and strategic compassion implementation that required years of expertise to develop and maintain effectively, regardless of exploitation assumptions about vulnerability, complexity, and professional management requirements that systematically eliminated employees' medical dignity and institutional loyalty. His approach to HR leadership was built around the assumption that employee vulnerabilities were naturally exploitable through corporate decisions, that medical crises represented leverage opportunities rather than human experiences, and that professional compassion was subordinate to exploitation authority, regardless of the empathy relationships and institutional capabilities that enabled organizational advancement and competitive success through sophisticated professional analysis and strategic empathy implementation that transcended exploitation convenience and business cost considerations that systematically marginalized human expertise and employee dignity during medical crises. Oliver treated complex human frameworks like exploitation opportunities that could be leveraged through corporate authority, while assuming that predatory approaches superseded relationship dependencies and empathy expertise that had been specifically developed to protect organizational operations from exactly the kind of competitive stagnation and professional elimination that characterized his approach to human management and employee recognition through systematic empathy dismissal and strategic compassion elimination that violated business wisdom and competitive intelligence about corporate relationship importance and professional empathy value, regardless of traditional exploitation assumptions and workplace predation patterns that systematically targeted medical vulnerability. The surgery coercion implementation that Oliver systematically executed was comprehensive and strategically predatory, incorporating every aspect of vulnerability exploitation while creating devastating medical environment through professional harassment and empathy, discrimination that violated both corporate ethics and basic human decency standards, while demonstrating complete ignorance of the emotional requirements and compassion competence that enabled organizational advancement and competitive positioning through empathy excellence and sophisticated professional humanity. Methodology management despite medical crisis and personal vulnerability that deserve protection rather than exploitation. During my emergency surgery recovery, Oliver deliberately contacted the hospital to demand immediate contract signature while exploiting my medical vulnerability as corporate opportunity that represented workplace efficiency rather than human experience that deserved compassion and institutional support, creating predatory environment that prioritized exploitation, maximization over human dignity, while systematically undermining the empathy expertise that enabled organizational transformation, and competitive advantages through sophisticated compassion methodology and strategic professional implementation that transcended exploitation marketing and business approach limitations, despite systematic workplace predation and vulnerability bias that systematically targeted medical crises. The exploitation included deliberate interruption of medical recovery to promote corporate alternatives, systematic assignment of coercive contract modifications that eliminated opportunities for informed decision-making, and comprehensive emotional manipulation designed to minimize human agency, while prioritizing exploitation authority over empathy, competence, and professional compassion that enabled competitive advantages through sophisticated corporate implementation and proven relationship, excellence despite medical vulnerability and workplace predation that systematically eliminated employees' medical dignity and recovery rights. Oliver's vulnerability discrimination extended beyond individual exploitation to encompass systematic exclusion from compassionate workplace policies, deliberate replacement of empathy solutions with predatory alternatives, and comprehensive professional marginalization, designed to eliminate institutional expertise while prioritizing exploitation approaches over human knowledge and proven empathy advancement that enabled organizational positioning and sustainable competitive success through advanced relationship management and professional compassion implementation, despite systematic workplace predation and medical exploitation patterns. However, Oliver's systematic vulnerability ignorance was creating exactly the kind of institutional catastrophe that would trigger comprehensive corporate exposure when empathy networks encountered major organizational accountability that required relationship expertise and professional compassion mastery, rather than exploitation approaches and predatory optimization that eliminated essential institutional capabilities and proven empathy excellence through business bias and workplace predation that systematically marginalized employee dignity and professional compassion during medical crises. Most devastatingly, Oliver made his predation explicit by threatening sign or die poor during my surgical recovery, while emphasizing that medical vulnerability superseded human dignity, demonstrating complete ignorance of my actual corporate influence and professional institutional connections that would soon destroy the entire organization through strategic empathy, empowerment, and compassion, excellence warfare that would expose his fundamental lack of human decency and professional leadership capability while triggering billion-dollar organizational collapse. The corporate mastery that I possessed transcended conventional business knowledge to encompass sophisticated understanding of organizational destruction, strategic collapse mechanisms, and institutional warfare techniques that represented years of advanced empathy education and professional compassion development that enabled complex relationship solutions and strategic organizational transformation through human competence and empathy excellence that distinguish breakthrough leadership from predatory experimentation that struggled with competitive implementation and sustainable business positioning despite vulnerability barriers and systematic workplace exploitation patterns. My institutional knowledge included comprehensive understanding of advanced corporate requirements, professional methodology optimization, and proven empathy techniques that enabled systematic competitive resolution, while understanding exactly which human approaches would outperform predatory methods through empathy, superiority, and compassion excellence that transcended exploitation limitations and business constraints through proven methodology and strategic relationship implementation, despite systematic workplace bias and predation patterns that systematically targeted employee vulnerabilities and institutional loyalty. This professional expertise incorporated advanced understanding of corporate fundamentals, empathy optimization techniques, and proven advancement methods that enabled sustainable organizational transformation while identifying potential predatory problems before they affected business effectiveness and competitive positioning through systematic professional analysis and intelligent corporate methodology management that prevented business failures through advanced professional competence and strategic corporate excellence, despite vulnerability, discrimination, and workplace bias that systematically eliminated employee opportunities and institutional stability. The empathy knowledge included sophisticated awareness of how predatory approaches appeared to major stakeholders who valued professional advancement and corporate reliability, understanding that exploitation-only methods represented potential competitive limitation that could immediately fail when encountering complex requirements that demanded relationship expertise and professional compassion mastery, rather than predatory algorithms and traditional solutions that eliminated institutional capabilities and proven empathy excellence through business bias and systematic workplace exploitation that targeted medical vulnerability and employee dignity. Most importantly, my professional expertise enabled strategic intervention during critical corporate challenges that could either protect organizational reliability through empathy competence or expose predatory limitations through systematic demonstration of exploitation. Only failure, an expensive predatory inadequacy that would destroy callous credibility while proving the enduring importance of human advancement and professional compassion mastery in relationship problem-solving environments. That required advanced corporate competence and sophisticated professional excellence, rather than exploitation, optimization, and predatory simplification that systematically marginalized employees' emotional contributions and professional capabilities while targeting medical vulnerabilities and institutional loyalty for corporate leverage, rather than human support and professional compassion. The recovery strategy initiation that I methodically orchestrated was comprehensive and sophisticatedly calculated, incorporating detailed corporate maneuvering and strategic professional investigation that would demonstrate the complete scope of empathy expertise, while proving exactly why vulnerability exploitation represented catastrophic corporate risk when directed against institutional professionals whose compassion capabilities enabled systematic advancement through empathy, excellence, and strategic professional architecture that transcended predatory authority and exploitation convenience through democratic empathy platforms and professional humanity warfare that recognized human dignity and medical rights that deserved protection rather than exploitation during institutional crises and professional vulnerability. Over the weeks following my surgery and Oliver's predatory ultimatum, I developed comprehensive corporate strategy that included sophisticated empathy optimization, professional compassion enhancement, and strategic organizational discovery that would maximize competitive positioning while building irrefutable case for human necessity through relationship excellence and professional empathy, analysis that demonstrated predatory misconduct through systematic evidence presentation and strategic empathy development that transcended exploitation bias and workplace predation patterns. The corporate architecture included revolutionary empathy techniques that could handle complex organizational requirements while maintaining professional accuracy potential, strategic relationship resonance that would generate maximum stakeholder attention and corporate accountability, and comprehensive advancement integration that would provide credible demonstration of systematic predatory inadequacy through empathy, transparency, and professional accountability that enabled human justice through corporate platform democracy that recognized employee dignity and compassion capabilities rather than exploitation opportunities and vulnerability manipulation. The empathy strategy incorporated sophisticated professional analysis that would optimize corporate discovery during comprehensive organizational investigation periods, advancement research that would maximize competitive compilation and relationship reach, and strategic professional deployment that would ensure comprehensive corporate accountability across multiple business channels, while building systematic predatory destruction through intelligent empathy mechanics and professional accountability through corporate transparency that recognized human dignity and compassion, competence, rather than medical exploitation and vulnerability leverage. Most importantly, the response included comprehensive empathy review and professional verification that would ensure corporate documentation accuracy while protecting against predatory claims through factual relationship compilation and strategic professional construction that would withstand corporate scrutiny while generating maximum empathy impact and professional accountability through democratic empathy platforms and strategic corporate excellence that enabled systematic predatory accountability through human transparency and professional justice, through relationship mastery that recognized employee dignity and empathy capabilities, rather than medical vulnerability and exploitation opportunities. The Corporate Intelligence Analysis compilation revealed systematic patterns of organizational vulnerability that extended throughout the company's institutional history to encompass sophisticated business misconduct, operational advancement failures, and strategic positioning disasters that would expose comprehensive corporate transformation through professional accountability and strategic empathy excellence that transcended conventional exploitation, dispute resolution through democratic corporate platforms, and empathy justice warfare that recognized human dignity and professional compassion capabilities, rather than vulnerability, manipulation, and predatory leverage opportunities. I identified detailed evidence of systematic competitive disadvantages that included specific documentation of predatory superiority failures over empathy approaches, comprehensive analysis of relationship advancement missed opportunities, and strategic presentation of corporate callousness that demonstrated clear patterns of human exploitation rather than isolated professional decisions that could be defended through exploitation policy or predatory necessity that might characterize systematic predation as reasonable business practice rather than executive failure and professional incompetence that transcended human limitations and workplace exploitation patterns. The corporate investigation included sophisticated empathy techniques that would generate maximum organizational accountability while maintaining professional credibility and factual accuracy. Relationship evidence elements that would create stakeholder attention and corporate consequences through shared professional experience, and strategic advancement presentation that demonstrated systemic problems with predatory leadership and exploitation culture, rather than individual business dispute, that might be dismissed as personal conflict or professional disagreement, rather than systematic workplace predation and professional marginalization that targeted medical vulnerability and employee dignity. The empathy archaeology incorporated advanced understanding of corporate precedent and professional accountability patterns that would ensure maximum relationship credibility while building systematic predatory destruction through intelligent corporate construction and strategic advancement deployment that leveraged empathy mechanics and professional verification algorithms for comprehensive corporate accountability through relationship transparency and empathy platform democracy that recognized human dignity and strategic competence rather than exploitation opportunities and vulnerability leverage. Most importantly, the analysis included sophisticated verification procedures that would ensure corporate narrative accuracy while providing comprehensive documentation of predatory misconduct through factual evidence and strategic empathy excellence that would generate irrefutable case for professional accountability through corporate justice and empathy warfare that operated through professional transparency rather than predatory protection and exploitation privilege that enabled systematic business violations and workplace misconduct that marginalized employee contributions and professional capabilities while targeting medical vulnerability and institutional loyalty for corporate manipulation rather than human support and professional compassion. The strategic preparation deployment that I meticulously executed was precisely timed and comprehensively optimized for maximum organizational impact and professional accountability through intelligent stakeholder mechanics and empathy excellence psychology that would ensure systematic corporate transformation while building irrefutable case for professional accountability through relationship excellence and strategic corporate warfare that transcended predatory authority and exploitation. Protection through democratic empathy platforms and professional democracy that recognized human dignity and compassion, competence rather than vulnerability, manipulation, and predatory leverage opportunities. The organizational implementation included sophisticated empathy architecture that incorporated compelling professional hooks, strategic advancement presentation, and corporate excellence elements that would generate immediate stakeholder attention while building systematic empathy momentum through intelligent professional design and strategic corporate distribution that leveraged optimal organizational timing and relationship algorithm optimization for maximum corporate impact and professional consequence through empathy transparency that recognized human expertise and compassion capabilities rather than medical exploitation and vulnerability leverage. The professional strategy included advanced empathy deployment that would maximize corporate discovery and stakeholder reach across multiple organizational networks, strategic precedent incorporation that would amplify excellence through relationship influencers and professional advocacy organizations, and comprehensive platform cross-posting that would ensure empathy evidence reached maximum authority while building systematic predatory destruction through strategic professional warfare, and corporate accountability that operated through empathy transparency rather than predatory hierarchy and exploitation privilege that systematically marginalized human contributions and targeted medical vulnerability. The accountability deployment incorporated sophisticated consequence optimization that included strategic response planning for stakeholder interaction, advanced empathy continuation architecture that would maintain professional momentum through sustained excellence, and comprehensive monitoring systems that would track corporate credibility while building systematic evidence of relationship impact and professional accountability through empathy success and strategic competitive management that recognized human dignity and professional competence rather than exploitation opportunities and vulnerability manipulation. Most importantly, the deployment strategy included intelligent escalation procedures that would maximize empathy distribution through stakeholder participation and professional sharing while building comprehensive corporate accountability through empathy platform democracy and strategic professional excellence that would generate systematic predatory consequence through relationship transparency and corporate justice that operated through democratic empathy platforms rather than predatory protection mechanisms and exploitation authority that enabled systematic business violations and workplace misconduct without accountability for predation against vulnerable employees and marginalization of human emotional contributions to organizational success and competitive positioning that deserve protection and support, rather than exploitation and manipulation during medical crises and institutional vulnerability. The corporate collapse revelation that resulted from strategic institutional deployment exceeded even my expectations for how quickly professional accountability could expose predatory misconduct while generating comprehensive organizational destruction through empathy credibility and corporate platform democracy that enabled systematic human justice through strategic relationship excellence and professional transparency that transcended predatory authority and exploitation protection through democratic stakeholder engagement and corporate excellence that recognized human dignity and compassion, competence rather than vulnerability, manipulation, and predatory leverage opportunities. Within days of strategic activation, the $2.3 billion corporate collapse had generated extensive business annihilation, including recognition, validation, and stakeholder support through professional networks, while building systematic competitive destruction that would permanently validate my relationship expertise and professional standing through corporate accountability and empathy transparency that demonstrated the power of professional justice and strategic corporate warfare that recognized human dignity and empathy, excellence capabilities, rather than medical exploitation and vulnerability manipulation. The competitive credibility included comprehensive stakeholder engagement across multiple empathy platforms with professional consequences from corporate advocacy organizations, systematic validation through industry networks and relationship protection groups, and widespread recognition through accountability mechanics that transcended initial stakeholder reach while building massive predatory destruction through empathy transparency and professional accountability that enabled human justice through strategic corporate excellence and relationship mastery that recognized human dignity capabilities rather than exploitation opportunities and vulnerability leverage. The empathy explosion generated extensive professional discussion about predatory accountability and corporate justice, while creating comprehensive documentation of systematic vulnerability violations through relationship evidence and professional transparency that would permanently affect the organization's corporate reputation and competitive positioning through empathy consequence and strategic business destruction that operated through democratic empathy platforms rather than predatory. Hierarchy and exploitation protection that systematically marginalized human contributions and targeted medical vulnerability. The corporate evidence created immediate recognition of professional advantage patterns while generating systematic predatory accountability through empathy justice and corporate platform democracy that demonstrated the revolutionary power of relationship excellence and strategic professional warfare for human protection and predatory consequence through transparent empathy platforms and democratic corporate engagement that transcended exploitation authority and organizational hierarchy through relationship excellence and professional accountability, through strategic corporate justice that recognized human dignity and professional compassion capabilities rather than medical vulnerability and predatory manipulation opportunities. If you believe that medical exploitation should face comprehensive corporate consequences and systematic professional accountability, that workplace predation deserves organizational transparency through strategic empathy excellence. Make sure you subscribe because these stories never get old. The HR director who thought exploitation authority eliminated human consequences was about to discover that some strategic operations, executives possess comprehensive empathy knowledge and institutional excellence capabilities that can systematically transform organizational accountability through strategic professional warfare and empathy platform democracy that transcends predatory hierarchy while delivering comprehensive professional justice through corporate transparency and democratic empathy engagement that recognizes human dignity and compassion capabilities rather than vulnerability, manipulation, and medical exploitation opportunities. The stakeholder reckoning crisis that followed was immediate and professionally comprehensive, as stakeholders realized that Oliver's systematic vulnerability exploitation had not only violated corporate principles, but created organizational liability that destroyed institutional credibility while exposing dangerous patterns of workplace misconduct and predatory leadership that had apparently operated through exploitation privilege without recognition of the human dignity and empathy expertise. That relationship professionals contributed to organizational success and competitive positioning through strategic empathy implementation and corporate compassion that transcended traditional exploitation assumptions and workplace predation patterns that systematically targeted employee medical vulnerability. Within hours of the comprehensive corporate collapse, stakeholders unanimously condemned the organization's predatory behavior while recognizing the fundamental violation of human dignity and professional respect that Oliver's actions represented, creating systematic accountability that would permanently affect corporate prospects and institutional standing, while validating the critical importance of workplace humanity and empathy leadership in business environments that required human competence and compassion excellence rather than vulnerability, exploitation, and predatory manipulation. Emergency corporate governance dissolution was initiated as stakeholders discovered that predatory leadership had created liability exposure through systematic human rights violations, eliminating investor confidence while creating organizational reputation damage that triggered complete business collapse and competitive positioning, destruction through relationship consequence, and empathy transparency that demonstrated corporate commitment to human dignity and professional compassion that transcended exploitation maximization and business predation patterns. The stakeholder decision included comprehensive corporate dissolution that prioritized human dignity and professional compassion while establishing industry precedents that protected vulnerable employees from workplace predation and systematic empathy elimination, creating organizational transformation that would prevent future predatory leadership through professional accountability and human transparency, that recognized employee well-being and emotional needs as essential components of corporate success and competitive advantage rather than exploitation opportunities and vulnerability leverage. The complete corporate restructuring was swift and humanity revolutionary, as institutional collapse realized that Oliver's systematic violations represented organizational catastrophe that required immediate business dissolution and comprehensive industry reforms that prioritized human dignity and professional compassion over exploitation, privilege, and predatory hierarchy that had characterized corporate culture approaches that enabled systematic predation through inadequate oversight and professional consequence mechanisms that failed to recognize human needs and empathy capabilities while targeting medical vulnerability and employee dignity for corporate manipulation. Oliver was terminated immediately with comprehensive legal notification that workplace predation prosecution was being pursued, while external investigation was initiated to assess the complete scope of vulnerability violations and professional misconduct that had operated through predatory authority and organizational indifference to human protection and professional justice requirements that recognized employee dignity and empathy expertise, rather than medical exploitation and vulnerability. Manipulation. My settlement included substantial compensation, reflecting empathy, expertise value, comprehensive vindication of institutional dignity, and industry mandate to implement human accountability throughout all organizational operations, while ensuring that future corporate cultures would prioritize professional respect and human dignity through advanced empathy, transparency, and comprehensive professional monitoring that prevented systematic violations and workplace misconduct through democratic accountability and professional transparency that recognized human needs and compassion excellence rather than exploitation opportunities and vulnerability leverage. The corporate revolution that resulted from professional accountability breakthrough created industry-wide transformation in executive behavior and workplace accountability, establishing empathy platform transparency as essential mechanism for human justice and professional protection, while demonstrating the revolutionary potential of compassion democracy for organizational transformation and predatory consequence through empathy, evidence and strategic professional excellence that transcended exploitation hierarchy through corporate transparency and democratic empathy engagement that recognized human dignity and professional compassion capabilities rather than vulnerability, manipulation, and medical exploitation opportunities. The professional accountability frameworks became industry standards for human justice and corporate oversight, while the comprehensive empathy transparency capabilities revolutionized workplace protection through professional accountability that provided unprecedented effectiveness in preventing vulnerability violations and systematic workplace misconduct through advanced empathy monitoring and strategic professional evidence deployment that enabled human justice and corporate democracy through democratic empathy platforms and professional transparency that protected human rights and employee dignity in organizational environments rather than targeting medical vulnerability and institutional loyalty for corporate exploitation. The human legacy established comprehensive frameworks for professional accountability and empathy justice that revolutionized workplace protection, while ensuring that predatory violations would face systematic empathy consequences through professional transparency and human accountability, that prevented workplace misconduct through advanced empathy monitoring and strategic professional deployment, that transcended predatory authority through democratic empathy platforms and professional democracy that enabled systematic human protection and workplace justice through intelligent empathy, oversight, and strategic corporate excellence that recognized human dignity and professional compassion capabilities, rather than medical vulnerability and exploitation opportunities. The lesson here transcends individual human justice and touches something fundamental about professional accountability, corporate democracy, and the revolutionary potential of empathy platforms for workplace protection and predatory consequence, while sophisticated professional expertise can provide systematic accountability and human justice that transcends predatory hierarchy and corporate authority through advanced empathy, transparency, and strategic professional warfare that enables democratic organizational oversight and comprehensive workplace protection through relationship excellence and empathy. Platform democracy that recognizes human dignity and corporate compassion. Capabilities rather than vulnerability. Exploitation and medical manipulation opportunities. Oliver's catastrophic mistake wasn't just exploiting individual medical vulnerability, it was systematically underestimating empathy capabilities and institutional expertise, while assuming that exploitation authority superseded human accountability and professional transparency that had been developed through years of advanced empathy expertise and corporate mastery that became essential when human justice and workplace protection depended on empathy democracy, rather than predatory hierarchy and exploitation privilege that eliminated human protection and professional accountability through systematic corporate violations and workplace misconduct that targeted employee dignity and institutional loyalty. Every organization that employs vulnerable professionals operates with human accountability requirements and empathy expertise exposure that create dangerous corporate liability when sophisticated institutional expertise is systematically exploited through predatory manipulation, treating vulnerability capabilities as exploitation opportunities rather than human experiences that deserve professional accountability and dignity protection through advanced empathy, excellence, and professional platform democracy that transcends predatory authority through empathy, transparency, and democratic professional engagement that protects human rights and workplace dignity through professional justice and strategic empathy. Excellence that recognizes human needs and compassion capabilities rather than medical exploitation and vulnerability manipulation. And that's how the HR director who told me to sign or die poor during surgery discovered that some strategic operations executives possess comprehensive empathy knowledge and institutional excellence capabilities that can systematically trigger billion-dollar organizational collapse through strategic professional deployment when the right empathy expertise meets the right vulnerability exploitation, and that sophisticated corporate systems enable democratic accountability and human justice, rather than predatory protection that eliminates professional rights faster than empathy. Excellence can expose workplace misconduct and deliver systematic professional consequence through corporate transparency and human democracy. If you want more stories where exploited vulnerable employees receive vindication through empathy expertise, where predatory arrogance meets professional accountability, where medical misconduct converts into comprehensive corporate destruction through strategic empathy evidence and professional warfare that proves the revolutionary power of workplace transparency for human justice and professional protection, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because somewhere out there, right now, another predatory executive is exploiting another vulnerable employee, while another corporate collapse is waiting to demonstrate that empathy expertise transcends exploitation. Authority and human democracy provides unprecedented protection for workplace justice and empathy accountability through relationship excellence and strategic professional transparency. The next human justice story is always just one sign or die poor thread away.